Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and make no mistake, this is your source for all things black and gold. Football just wouldn't be football without Berwick Rangers. Stand by for this edition of the Let It BRFC podcast.
Welcome to the BRFC podcast. I'm Adam Hunter. I'm joined again by Kevin Haynes. Hi Kevin, you alright?
Yeah, very well. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So you had your team quiz night on Wednesday. How did that go?
It was good. There's a bit banter flying about, and I think the boys enjoyed it. It was good. Went well.
How did you get on personally?
I won it. I was the best.
It's not what I'd read, but
I think if you ask every single person, they'll say they won.
one of them sort of quizzes.
Aye.
In the Lowland League released this week about the hopes to return in the last week in September, first week in October. Is that in fitting with the plans for pre-season, is it?
It's where we kind of got the original indication that it would be first week of September, first week of October. So we've basically we took that as a start date and worked our way backwards to when we were going to start. So everything's fell into place. We're not going to change much. So it's just good to get that confirmation. It's a massive part of people's lives in Scotland, football. You know what I mean? And they've now been deprived of it for 6 months, or it will be 6 months at the time. So it needs to go. It does. It needs to go, and it needs to happen. So
yeah.
I think, Kevin, for that uncertainty that we've had, I think, as you say, it's just to get that start date. We can start planning for your pre-season, looking ahead to that. I know you've signed a lot of players and got most of your squad in place, so that's great. But as I say, it's just getting that start date and getting back onto the training field, really.
Aye, and that's it. And what it's going to be like on the training field, I suppose no one knows at this level yet. The guidelines can change so regular, but it's just having that date that yes, we can go on here, and we know when the centre's opening, and I'll meet Jano again this week coming, and we'll have pre-season nailed. We'll have it the sessions done and what we're doing. So it is positive, definitely.
Well, I guess this week we have former defender Alan Banks and we have former player and manager Paul Smith. Hello guys, how are you?
I'm good, Adam.
Yeah, good, Adam. Yeah, thanks very much for inviting on. Much appreciated.
Good, it's good to have you both on. Kev mentioned Jano there actually. Paul, you signed him initially, didn't you?
I did sign him. Yeah, I signed him the season where I actually got sacked. Obviously a very good player and a good manager as well. It was. We'll probably come on to it later on, but Jano picked a wee injury up just before the season kicked off, and probably that was part of the reason we didn't start that season particularly well. As I say, a great signing, and he went on to have a very good career at Berwick, as he did previously with Alloway as well. And
Alan, for yourself, you played between 93 and 96 for Berwick, and it was part of the transfer involved John Coughlin. So do you want to talk a little bit around how that transfer came about?
Yeah, so I actually played, before that I was at Meadowbank for 4 seasons. Great wee club. Away sort of teams never like coming to Meadowbank, Paul, I'm sure you'll agree with that. It was not a nice place to come. Terry Christie was very tactically aware manager and stuff. So I had 4 great years there. Jano actually played in the first team when he was 16, and he probably looked about 11 at that point. I'm not so sure he looks too much older now, so he's definitely so this was pre-Bosman. So when your contract was up, the club still held on to you. So myself and John were out of contract, and we knew that Meadowbank were desperate to sign Graham Davidson. So we were asked, would you form part of a swap deal? So myself and Cough drove down one night to Berwick. We met Jimmy Crease and the chairman at that point, Roy McDowell. But the money wasn't great, we were keen to go, but the money wasn't that good. So I remember driving up the road and Cough was like, well, why don't we'll speak to Meadowbank, say, well, the money's not great, but can you make it worth our while? So we had that conversation. And I remember about maybe 24 hours later, Meadowbank said to me, look, Alan, we'd be quite keen for you to stay. You know, we're not that bothered getting rid of you, he says, but if you go, we'll give you 500 quid, right? And I thought, I'm not so sure they do want me to stay, you know. So in the end, myself and John got £500 each to get out of Meadowbank down to Berwick. And the good story of the thing, in Davy Roseborough, who, Paul, you'll know Davy Roseborough, record goal scorer at Meadowbank, he still goes on about to this day. So he was in the same situation. And they were offering Rosie £400 to stay at Meadowbank. And we got £500 to go. So it was good and delighted, you know. We'll come on to it, I'm sure. But in the end, it was a great move for me and a club that still very, you know, I've got a lot of time for the guys down there. Great wee club.
Who was around the team at the time?
So back then, so that was 93. So Jimmy Crease at that point was the manager. We had Big Gary in goals, Big Gary O'Connor, who was on the other week, top lad. One of my best pals, Kevin Kane, great guy. Wee Craig Valentine, good player by the way, but maybe one of the biggest pests on a night out ever. Big Mark Cowan, wee Tommy Graham, who was a bit of a Berwick legend in his day. So we had a big Edinburgh contingent, and obviously we had the local hero Martin Neal, who was a terrific player, very, very gifted player. I think he had not long came back from Dundee United, just didn't settle there. So Martin was probably the only local guy in the team at the time. Excellent player though, very good.
Yeah, I remember, Paul, when you were manager, I first started going, it was 2000, I think it was. So I only saw Martin towards the sort of end of his career, but I don't think I fully appreciated how good he was until like further down the line. But he had these issues sort of off the field as well that you supported him through, Paul, wasn't you?
Yeah, Martin, over my course of my 8 years there, Martin was by far my best player. And I know he had his issues off the park, which we dealt with as a football club through Jamie Currell. But Martin more than repaid that club for his performances on the park. His only problem had that wee suspension problems. He was always picking up suspensions and sending off, which you do find with, you know, as Alan touched on, a fantastic football player, very gifted football player, and sometimes he did react to situations during games and got himself sent off. But it was I think Martin had been suspended for 3 or 4 games, and we were travelling up to Forfar to play Forfar. We had a good record up at Forfar, and Greg Shaw said to me, you know, what are you thinking today? And I said, well, I'm going to play Martin. I'm going to bring him straight back into the team. And Greg had turned around and he said, no, I wouldn't bring him back in. I think the boys that have come in have done well. I said, no, I'm bringing Martin back in. He's just too good a football player not to have in that team. And after 20 minutes at the Forfar game, Greg tapped me on the shoulder. He goes, that's the best decision you've made today. He was just a fantastic football player. And I know as Alan touched on, he was up at Dundee United, but Martin should have played at a far higher level than what he did. Martin Neal was I played in the lucky enough to play in the Premier League. Martin Neal was a far better football player than what I was. And for me, he should have played in the Premier League.
So we've talked a little around the players that were around the team when you first joined, Alan. In your first season, we finished second to Stranraer in the league.
Yeah.
But there was a major reshuffle, so Stranraer ended up being promoted to the first division, and we were promoted to the second division because the third division was created from then. And then the following year, we had Morton in our league.
Yeah.
And we talked this week around sort of your games against Morton. What were those sort of experiences like?
No, it was good. I mean, Morton were an excellent team at that point. I think the majority of them were full time. So I'm thinking in that team, Derek McInnes played in that team, who ended up selling to Rangers for 350,000. Derek Lilly, centre forward, he ended up going to Leeds for £500,000. This is from Morton, you know, which is crazy money. And I remember we played Morton October '94. We played Morton at home at Shielfield, and the week leading up to it, and Craig Forsyth reminded me about this other week, so I did a bit digging about. Morton signed 2 Finnish internationalists, Rajamaki and Lundberg, leading up to the game for 2 players for £250,000. So remember, they're coming down to Berwick. We're all part time. I remember that day Shielfield was rocking, and we ended up beating them. We beat them 2-1. Warren scored 2 that day, and it was just. I remember, even though it was over 20 years ago, I still remember that game where they came down, big team, all these great players, and we tucked them away 2-1. So it was good. And then at the end of that season, with another game, Mont home. At this point, we were tailing off slightly, but we're kind of still in the mix. And another great game. We go beat 4-3 in the end. Warren scored a hat-trick. So that was 5 goals he scored against Morton at home, and then he got his move. Funnily enough, he got a move to Morton in the summer. And I think he was saying he was there for about 7 or 8 years, I think.
What was he like as a player, Alan?
Warren?
Aye.
Good. I mean, see, about a year and a half. So he came to Berwick in 93, 94. He came off the bench in the FA Cup final for Sunderland in 92. So he got about the last 10, 15 minutes. And then, a season later, he's, trotting out at Shielfield. So, but just a natural, really fit lad, natural goal scorer. I mean, I keep saying I got him his move to Morton, setting up all the goals. He just said he made my bad crosses look good, So
that's exactly what he said to me this week. He said you're the best, you're the best fullback that he's ever played with. But he made your passes look good.
I sometimes just hit off with some people, I would put my pal Kevin Kane into that bracket as well. But in terms of Warren, just a natural goal scorer, fit lad. A good player, very good player.
I think Alan, he was great in the air, for the size. Warren's not the biggest, but he was clever in the air and, scored a lot of headers. His movement was good, and as you say, he's still a very fit boy, and had a very good career.
That big forehead helped as well with the header.
I'm not mentioning the foreheads near Zadok.
So he scored 18 goals in 98 appearances from what I worked out prior to the podcast. Is there any goal that sort of stands out in particular, Alan?
Yeah, so I ended up scoring a few goals, like saying there was quite a lot of penalties in there. I must add, but there was a game we played down at Queen of the South in a game, and it was the old B&Q Cup, which I think now, Kev, is it the Tunnocks Tea Cake Cup or something like that. And
we're in the final of that one, Alan. Just to let you know.
Oh yeah. Who are you playing that, Paul?
We play Inverness in that one.
Very good. Very good. So,
and we won it 3 years ago as well.
Was that the one at Easter Road?
Easter Road, yeah.
Brilliant.
Just thought I'd throw that in.
Is that definitely going ahead, Paul?
We believe it's going to go ahead, yeah. I think they're going to carry, obviously, like the Scottish Cup. We believe that they're going to play that game sometime this year. Good. So fingers crossed, because it's it's a disappointment for the players. It's out on a final.
But so that game down at Queen of the South, so it's a B&Q Cup. We're getting beat 1-0, and after about half an hour, the home fans, they start booing number 3, and I'm like, what have I done? I wasn't the hardest of players, and they're booing number 3, and this keeps going on. So about 5 minutes to go before half time, I get the ball, beat a couple of players, and I actually hit one in the top corner for about 20 yards. So my celebration is like, I lost the plot basically. I'm really in the end, giving it what for, So one each at half time, get into the changing room, and one of the boy, John, I always remember the boy John Sukaluk comes over to me and says, "Oh, great goal, Banksy, brilliant." He says, "But what about your celebration?" I went, "I know." I says, "But did you not hear them? They were giving number 3 dogs abuse pelters." He went, "You're number 6." So he was number 3, and he cemented somebody, and I was playing kind of left back, and I'm thinking I'm number 3. So I sheepishly ran out at the start of the second half and apologised to the fans. But yeah, that was probably one of the better goals I've scored. But
that's great. Have you ever been in a case of mistaken identity, Kev?
Are you kidding? No chance.
All the time. I can't hide from anybody, really, can I?
You were held you were held in high regard amongst the Berwick support, and you were included in an all-time greatest 11 in a poll that we did on Twitter a couple of years ago. How was your relationship with the fans?
Aye, very good, very good. I was like, always, when you go back to a club, if you've done quite well there, normally the fans like you. If you've not done too well, then the fans don't care too much for you. But the one thing I was thinking this the other day is that every home game at Shielfield, after every game, regardless if we won or we got beat, we'd always go with the black and gold and have a couple of beers with the fans. And I think you got a wee bit of respect for that, So sometimes you took a bit of a hard time, but, in the same breath, a week later, if you won, the guys were patting you on the back and buying you a beer and stuff. So, no, good bunch of boys. I mean, the last time I was at Berwick was for a game was a year past April. I came down with Yano, Kev McLeish for a game when they played Albion Rovers. It was almost like last chance saloon to stay in the league, and they got beat 3-0. And I genuinely came away from there thinking, Berwick, they're going down, and they might just disappear. I genuinely thought that. But see with the new board coming in and all that, it's gone actually the other way, And everything I read now is hugely positive. You're on social media, really positive. You've got Warren now, leading the foundation, etc. So, and that's great to see, because I genuinely felt, coming away that the place to me was toxic. But when you're at the bottom of the league, you're fighting to stay in the league. It's not going to be a happy place, but I'm delighted to see that, with Yano and Kev in charge and stuff, signing some decent players. It's definitely, to me, it's a club that's back on the up.
Totally agree with what Alan's saying there. I've been down to a couple of games, and you can see that which way the club were going. And it's, I think, very difficult job for Yano and Kevin, probably for the next couple of years, because there's a lot of clubs in that Lowland League paying a hell of a lot of money. And it's great just to see that Berwick have survived. I think they've got, a good board back in place now. Craig's back in, and Brian Porteous and the team there. I think there's a good board, there's a good structure there, and hopefully the guys can, work with the board, with the foundation coming on board now. And it's as I say, it might be 2-3 years before the club on the park is able to go and challenge, the top end of the Lowland League, because, I know what these clubs are paying at the top end of that, the Lowland League, and it's going to be very, very difficult to challenge up there. But it's a case for me that the club has survived, and they're building new foundations for hopefully for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah,
I saw the one. Paul, sorry, and Kev, on this very quickly on that. I watched the guy Nathan Austin play a few times. He was at East Fife.
Yeah, he went from East Fife Falkirk up to Inverness. Yeah,
he was at Inverness. He came on in the semi-final against Hearts in the Scottish Cup, maybe a year past April, and the next minute he's signing for Kelty, which is crazy, absolutely crazy.
How do you feel, Kevin? Obviously, I know bits and pieces what's happening in the Lowland League, but when you see Kelty, East Kilbride, East Stirling, BSC Glasgow, they're all spending huge sums of money, and I feel for you guys, because it is going to be very, very difficult to challenge these guys.
I think as well, Paul, I genuinely believe that the league's going to get better over the next couple of years, because I've said on these podcasts a few times, the difference from non-league now to League Two, there's not a big deal. You know what I mean? There's a lot of teams in the Lowland League that would compete in League Two or Highland League like Cove have done. So I just feel that I think there'll be clubs that's going to drop into the Lowland League, and it's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. I just think over the next 5, 6, 7 years, I just think Scottish football is going to change dramatically through the pyramid, and that's what it's been designed to do. And we're unfortunate that we've been a casualty of it, but it's going to freshen everything up, and it's going to make everything, in my opinion, better.
Yeah, it's certainly going to make the Lowland League this year. It's not been competitive, and I miss Bonnerig out there. It's going to be really competitive, that Lowland League next year. It's going to be a very, very good league with a lot of good football players that have. Paul Payton signed with East Kilbride. A lot of good football players dropping down from the Championship, League One, League Two, and to go and play in the Lowland League, because again there is more money there with some clubs.
I saw that with Paul Payton in his interview as part of his signing on. He was saying it was one of the driving factors behind his move was because of the uncertainty around professional football at the moment, and he could guarantee that you get a good wage at East Kilbride, and then a part-time job as well. So he's sort of seeing himself over. So I might see a little bit more of that too in the next sort of 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, I think I know where we are at Wraith, and the full-time wage, you can quite easily, if you've got a good job and you're picking up good part-time wages, you're better off. And I think Alan was probably part-time all his career, and I think if you've got a good job at 21, 22, you can build on that. A lot of professional football players are full-time professional football players are playing till they're 30, 35, not making a huge living, and then all of a sudden hit this wall at 34, 35 and have to go out into the big bad world and look for a job. And it can be very, very difficult. So I think more and more players now are looking at possibly going part-time and getting a different career and playing part-time football as well. Yeah, I think a lot of people think, if you're full-time, you're making a hell of a lot of money, but I can rest assure you there's only probably 1 or 2% in Scotland that are making that sort of money that they can retire when they finish playing football.
Because that goes back to when we had the conversation with Danny Swanson, and Danny was saying, Adam, that he was a plumber, and he got offered to go to Hamilton, and he knocked it back, and then he went to Dundee United, but his first contract was £500 a week. So a plumber earns that. You know what I mean? Easily. So if you were to take Danny in that situation, like you're saying, Paul, he sticks to being a plumber, but goes and signs with somebody else part-time, then his quid's in, compared to his full-time contract. But I don't think people take that into consideration, eh?
The same with Rory McAllister when he was at Peterhead. He was being touted about moves up into the Premier League even, but because he had his sort of trade, he was quite content with continuing with that while staying in the part-time wage.
Yeah, it is. And again, we just talking ourselves at Wraith, we've obviously brought a couple of young boys. We've obviously had to cut down the number of young boys we bring in. We brought 2 boys in a year past January, so we've been in about 18 months now, and it was great because we could actually work with these 2. We didn't have a big squad. We were probably working with a squad. We work a hybrid system, so we're part-time and full-time. So we could, because we only had the 2 sort of younger kids, and they have a recovery session on a Monday now, which they never had in probably my day and Kevin's and Alan's day. You'd never have a recovery session. So it was great on a Monday that we could go and just work individually with a wee group of 5 players, and we'd have the 2 young kids in, and we've seen them come on leaps and bounds. And we played young Kieran Bowie, 16-year-old, in the first team, and he's had a fantastic season this year, scoring 10 goals in the first team, and he's got himself a move to Fulham. So with working with a smaller number, it's great that you can improve these kids, and hopefully young Dylan as well. I'll keep improving. He'll hopefully play in the Championship this year and potentially get that big move. But that's few and far between that these kids get a big move. But it's still every schoolboy's dream is to play professional football full-time and to go to the top level. So you can understand, as a 16-year-old getting to 21, 22, you still live for that dream of getting your big move.
Yeah, just very quickly on that as well, I played part-time probably from 19 years old to about 31. But obviously I work with Scottish Widows, and I've worked there since I was 17. And I've seen, over the years, you saw guys who were full-time coming to go back to part-time, trying to find a job. And there was a few of them actually struggled, because full-time, when you train a couple of hours a day, get a Wednesday off, and all of a sudden they're working full-time Monday to Friday, they're then training Tuesday, Thursday, and they're like, this is tough, And I've seen a few guys really struggle with that over the years, but you'll probably see more and more of that happening over the next wee while, I would imagine.
Just going back on what you were saying, Paul, about players, about being that professional or wanting to be that professional football player, do you still think that desire's there in players? Or do you think it's gone a wee bit?
I think players are completely different how we were, especially probably when me and Alan were playing the old school, and yourself, Kevin, sort of old school, looked up to senior professionals, and I think the young boys come in now and they're very, very sure of themselves and very cocky. What I would say now is, I think in our day, as Banksy touched on, you go for a few beers after the game, Kevin maybe went for 10 or 12 beers after the game. We would always be, there was always...
What a game.
I wouldn't say there was a drinking culture, but it was more social. You would be more out drinking. I think now with young players, they are more professional, look after themselves. There's obviously more testing going on, so I think they are more professional that way. But I think the kids now are completely different. And the game has changed. Management's changed. Managers have had to change how they treat players. Obviously, thanks to what with Terry there, who I've heard rant and roar a few times. I worked under Jim McLean. So you have to go in, and obviously you probably see that now, Kevin, on the coaching side with Yano now. You know, you have to treat players differently now. You know, it's still the same. Some still need a cuddle, some need a wee kick up the backside, but you certainly watch how you have to treat players now, which is probably a good thing now as well.
Club 1881 is your opportunity to be part of a community of Dream Team supporters, helping to transform the club's financial fortunes. For just £18.81 per month, you can help your club become a more sustainable one, safeguarding the future of Berwick Rangers Football Club and building a solid foundation for the club to target future success from. Club 1881 members receive access to exclusive Gers content ranging from podcasts to videos, player interviews to meet the management team sessions, newsletters to club shop sales and more. And if that wasn't enough, all Club 1881 members will gain free admission to all home Lowland League fixtures, where they might even scoop a £200 jackpot through the bond scheme number, also included in their membership fee. To become a Club 1881 member today, simply head to berwickrangers.com/shop/Club 1881. One team, your team, Dream Team.
Banksy, this week we've seen an incident with Son and Lloris at Spurs, with tempers sort of boiling over as they approached half time. You were telling us that this happened in a testimonial game at Bonnybridge with Kevin Kane and Willie Irvine. Do you want to talk a little around that?
Yeah, aye. And Paul, you'll remember Willie Irvine. Willie was a right good player, but could he moan? Honestly, he moaned in the changing room. He moaned in the bus going to the game. He was just a constant boy he was never that happy, you know what I mean? But good player, very, very good player. So I remember we went to Bonnybridge one Sunday. I think it was like Shields testimonial, and I think I'd been out the night before. So Jimmy Cleese was the manager. I says, Jimmy, can I just sit on the bench today? So I'm sitting with Jimmy watching the world go by. And then the next minute, Willie and Kevin are knocking 10 bells out each other in the centre circle. So the two of them got sent off, which is, for a testimonial, will be quite hard to do. So I spoke to Kano during the week. I said, what actually happened? So Kevin's view, or his take on it, was that Willie shouted, "You must be the..." Well, I watched the Lions, but he said, "You're the greediest player I've ever played with." And apparently Kevin says, "Why should I pass to you? You're slower than a week in the jail." And that just then led to one thing. They're literally knocking 10 bells at each other. And I'm sure I had to go, as a result of it, I'm sure I had to get off the bench and go on and play a few minutes there. They literally hated each other. But as it turns out, they played at Meadowbank together, they played at Berwick together, and they ended up playing at Alloa after that as well.
They signed at the same time, didn't they?
They did, aye. But so there was no love lost between those two. So I'm sure that was a highlight of the testimonial from memory.
Oh, madness, man. What have been your best memories from your time with Berwick?
I think it was just, playing in a really good team, and we, at that point as well, when we used to go down and train on a Tuesday at Berwick, and a Thursday in Edinburgh, and obviously every second Saturday we'd go down to Berwick for a home game. But because there was a lot of, we're all young at that, we're all 23, 24 at the time, we'd travel down together, so there was a right good spirit amongst us all. So for me, I was there for 3 years. We touched on it earlier, I managed to score a few goals, but it was more playing in a good team, and also as well, I think Berwick at this point, you had P as the kit man, who was a lovely guy, Dennis the secretary, who I spoke to during the week, you had Robert on the front row. These were proper football guys that you need at football clubs like Berwick. You know, P unfortunately passed away last year, but they were great. You know, and every time I go back now, you know, they can't look after you enough. You know, I mean, I was at Cowdenbeath for 18 months. Later on in my career, and I never played a game in 18 months. I got a really bad injury. And now I go to Cowdenbeath and they look at me and say, you know, who are you, sort of thing. Whereas you go to Berwick, you've been there 3 years and the guys can't do enough for you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Great club. Lots of happy memories as well.
Sorry, I'll jump in there. I have to mention P, because just as Alan says there, Robert Johnston, P and Dennis, especially Robert and P used to travel to the away games. So we got the bus, we used to pick the bus up at Musselburgh and we were playing up at Brecon. So we've gone up to Brecon, I think we've won 2-0 up at Brecon, and we're all sitting on the bus and we're waiting on Robert Wilson to come out the boardroom, but we're waiting on P coming out, and P gets carried out onto the bus. So he'd actually been in the boot room on the whiskey with the boot room with the boys at Brecon, as he did at Forfar as well. So we're on the bus and we're travelling down, and I'm saying, how's P going to get home? Because he's got the car at Musselburgh. So we had to get somebody to travel up from Berwick with 2 people to travel up from Berwick to meet the bus to actually drive P down the road. But as Alan touched on, you need people like that, and they were just fantastic people about the football club, which I think helped make Berwick as good as it was. Why we have that great affection for the football club.
Yeah,
definitely. I think touching on it, and Paul touched it there about, you know, the social side of things. You know, if you were up, you know, away to Forfar, away to Brecon, all of these places. Tam Henry was big on this. Tam Henry was the manager, John Coughlin was assistant. So the first thing they would do is find the nearest off licence when we're leaving these grounds, you know. So you'd have a few beers on the bus, you know, the Edinburgh boys would go out and stuff. But that's massive in terms of, you know, building a good team spirit and stuff. And thankfully we were all young at the time, so it was good, really good times.
And you left for Steady in '96. What was the reason behind that move?
So I was thinking this during the week. So a big part of the didn't have success. We were playing a really good team at Berwick, and a lot of that was down to Tam Henry. Now, Paul, you'll know Tam. Tam Henry is not everyone's cup of tea, right? But he was a terrific manager, right? Really good. So he went on from Berwick to Alloa, St Mirren. He got St Mirren promoted. But so in the final season, Tam and John Coughlin, they left in about the March time to go to Alloa. And at that point, we kind of lost our way a wee bit. The manager who came in was a chap, Ian Ross, who actually played for Liverpool. And we were kind of lost our way. And then towards the end of the season, you know, we were thinking, well, Tam's going to come back and sign a few players, right? So he signed Kano, he signed Mark Cowan, he signed Valley, he signed Willie Irvin, right? So I'm thinking, well, there's 4 of the sort of spine of the team away, eh? So then I'm thinking, and Tam was trying to sign me for Alloa as well, but for some reason, Stennismuir were doing really well at that point. They'd beat Aberdeen in the Cup. I remember being at that game. And I've known Terry for years. Graham Armstrong's assistant manager. Terry's son Max was playing. So I knew a lot of the Stennismuir guys. So I thought, well, I think a lot of people thought, well, you'll just go to Alloa with the rest of the boys. But I ended up going to, I signed with Stennismuir. And that was 96. And that was just before the Bosman ruling came in. So I actually went to, I think it was maybe one of the last ever football tribunals. So I had to go through to Glasgow and stuff, and in the end, I think the transfer fee was a whopping £14,000. But I made sure those
that was a steal, Banksy, an absolutely.
The only thing when you ask the Stennismuir fans is when I signed for them, they actually got worse. So all that great success, we got relegated 2 seasons later. So, but no, I was there for 4 seasons. And then from there, I signed for Craig Levine was the manager at Cowdenbeath. So he signed me along with a few other boys from Stennismuir at the time, Alan Lawrence, Keith Wright. But I ruptured my Achilles tendon just before the start of the season. So I was there for 18 months and I never played a game. which must be some kind of record, you know. So that was me. But no, always, you know, I know it's a sort of cheesy line, but it's one of these that over the years, you'd always look for you know, how did Berwick get on, what's happening, stay in touch with the guys. Delighted that Yano and Kev are now in charge. I've known Yano for a long, long time. Obviously, Robbie Horn was the manager as well, but it was tough for Robbie. You know, the club wasn't great at that point. So, as I say, hopefully the club's heading back in the right direction.
Yeah, good. And Paul, you sort of joined the club around that sort of time, didn't you? Initially as a player.
Yeah, I think Alan touched on that. You know, there are a lot of good players there. Valley was an excellent player who I tried to sign back to Berwick. So I think the heart of that team was actually ripped out. And when I came in at that time with Jimmy Thompson. Jimmy brought me in as player assistant manager, and I did let Jimmy Thompson down on the park because I ended up I was taking all the training and I didn't keep my own fitness up, and for that 3 months I think that I probably was on the park. I didn't perform at all, and that was obviously going to be a big part for Jimmy, was me playing in the middle of the park for him, and I certainly let him down there. And unfortunately, Jimmy lost his job, and I was asked to take the caretaker. I think it was maybe for a month, and we did reasonably well in that month, and I was lucky enough to be offered the job. Yeah,
because he was second bottom in the league, I think, when you first took over, weren't we?
I think so. Yeah. We didn't have a great start at all, and as I say, I let Jimmy down, and probably I let myself down on the park. But you have to move. As Kevin and Alan know, you sink or swim in these things, and I had to try and put myself in for the job, and I was lucky enough to get the job at the end of the day.
So how did you find the role, Paul, player assistant manager? Because I'd done it just before I stopped playing, and it actually made me stop playing because I was doing that, and I couldn't work out what side of the fence I was on. I couldn't get to grips with it, whether it was a player, whether it was coaching, whether I just couldn't do it.
I think for myself, Kevin, it was more. Even at what would be 34, probably 35 at that time, I played with Ayr United the year before and we won the league, and I was still a fit player. I had to be fit. I was a dog in the middle of the park at that time, and I had to be fit. And I lost my fitness over that close season and pre-season because I was taking the training too much. So I didn't find the role too hard, being in the changing room and telling the players what I thought. I did feel a wee bit that, as I said earlier on there, I was certainly letting the players down on the park with my fitness. So that was the biggest thing for me, that I wasn't performing on the park, which I should have done, and I let my fitness. On working with the players and telling the players, I didn't find that a problem. And when I did get manager, I felt it was the right time just to completely stop, because I think it's a very, very difficult role. Player assistant, especially player manager. I think it's too big a job, and I made my mind up then that when I got given the job, just to pack in playing.
So prior to that, you've mentioned that you were at United. You also had spells at Wraith, Dunfermline, Hearts, Falkirk, and Motherwell. What would your career highlight be?
I think probably a couple, because it's all about you play football to win things, and I was lucky enough to win 2 championships with Dunfermline and one with Ayr United. So they're the big things. You never forget these days. We won. The big one was we played Meadowbank, final game of the season at East End Park, and Falkirk were up at Forfar, and we needed a draw to win the game. I'm not sure if you actually played in that game, Alan. Were you at Meadowbank at that time?
No, it was just before my time. I think I signed in that summer, but the boys still talk about that game.
Yeah, and obviously Meadowbank went 1-0 up, and I do believe the Meadowbank players were rooting for Dunfermline that game. Meadowbank went 1-0 up, and the crowd had gone silent, and we were getting feedback that Falkirk were winning up at Forfar. So at that moment in time, we were going to finish second and not win the league. And we were lucky enough that the legend that John Watson is at Dunfermline, and a fitting tribute to John, that he scored the goal to take us up. We ended up drawing 1-1 with Meadowbank, and Forfar went on to beat Falkirk anyway. But that was just a fantastic day, fantastic weekend, and then a fantastic week in Magaluf. So a great. As I said, probably that one game it was just, you remember so much. It was just a fantastic day. And to win, lucky enough to win another 2 championships, it was fantastic.
Paul, you were saying there about John Watson. I should have said earlier, so when I signed in '93, John was player assistant manager to Jimmy Crease. He had just joined as well. But he broke his leg in pre-season and never kicked a ball for Berwick, but top lad, right? His team kind of, no a team talk, but Jimmy would say, right, John, you got anything to say? And it would be, right, lads, let's take the chairman's money and get back up the road. And that was it. That was his sort of words of wisdom. Great lad though, right, good lad.
John Watson and obviously the late great Norrie McCarthy, were just best of buddies, and they were sort of 2 Mr. Dunfermlines at that time. That they run that football club on the playing side and the changing room, which was so important. And as I say, I had great times there. I was obviously at Dundee United as a young kid, and I wasn't good enough to play in that great Dundee United team that were obviously. It was Dundee United and Aberdeen were sort of on top of Scottish football at that time. That's when United were getting into finals in Europe and winning the league. So I wasn't good enough football player to play in that team, and I moved on to Raith Rovers, and Raith were part time. And as we touched on earlier on, that was Alan mentioned that from going. And Dundee United was a hard school to train in. You were in just about every afternoon at Dundee United working hard. And I went to Raith Rovers, and it was that part-time setup, and I had to go and get a job for a wee while. And it was, as Alan said, it's difficult. It's difficult to realise you've been full-time for 3 years, and all of a sudden you're playing part-time football and working 8 till 5, and going from there on a Tuesday, Thursday to go and train, and doing that change was difficult. And we had players at Raith like Jimmy Marshall and Alan probably had players the same over his career. They were working in the pit. They were down the pit in Fife and then coming into training, and I'm going, wow, how did these boys actually do that? Yeah. And I think, again, Kevin mentioned that these players wouldn't do that now. Players wouldn't go and do that shift that these guys were doing and then go and play football. It was a sort of wee different breed at that time.
Paul, must have been massive for you as well, being a Hearts supporter to play for them as well.
Yeah, that was very late on in my career. Actually, I had not possible. Joe Jordan tried to sign me at Hearts when I was at Dunfermline, and that fell through. And then I moved on to Falkirk, and there was a swap deal lined up as well with. The first time it was Alec MacDonald and Sandy Jardine tried to sign me. And then Joe Jordan tried to sign me at Hearts with a swap deal with Wayne Foster. That fell through. So I thought as a Hearts fan, that was never going to happen. And that 34-year-old out the blue, because I'd worked with Jim Jeffries at Hearts were struggling a wee bit at that time, bottom of the league. Jim did a deal with me, and I was lucky enough to it was only ever going to be a short. Jim said that when I signed at 34-year-old, it was only going to be short term. I played I came in, played 4 games. I think we picked 9 or 10 points up in the 4 games. It got us sort of to mid-table. At that time, we signed Jules Rousset, the goalkeeper, Bruno, the centre-half, who were fantastic football players, and Hearts had a lot of good players there. David McPherson, obviously Craig was there, Gary Mackay. And as I say, the week before we were playing the Edinburgh Derby, it's in Castle, which would have been a dream to play in. I picked up a wee back injury, and I had to drop out the team, and Gary Mackay came in, and Gary Mackay obviously maybe got a wee kick up the backside because I had taken his place. Gary Mackay was absolutely outstanding for the rest of the season, and not only was a bit part player from then on in, but it was great to pull on that jersey for that. I think I played 9 games, whatever it was. It was great at 34-year-old to manage to go play for your boyhood team.
And Hearts obviously biggest club probably in your career, the actual size of the club, and you've almost done it backwards, most folks start there and then maybe filtered in the leagues, but you've went the opposite way.
Yeah, no, I think, Kevin, that was because I'd had a spell at I'd been at Dunfermline, and Jim Jeffries took me. Jim had got Falkirk promoted into the Premier League, and I signed for Falkirk, and I went and did a job for Jim, and my job was just to sit in the midfield. I had Kevin McAllister, what a fantastic football player to my right. I had Brian Rice to the left, obviously another great player, and Stevie Fulton at times, and different middle midfield players. My job was just to sit in front of the back four, win my tackle and make a pass and let these guys go and play. So Jim realised what job I could do, and as I said, Hearts were struggling at that time, and I think Jim just thought I could come in and do that wee job for Hearts and just sit and do that professional job. And I did it for a wee spell, and as I touched on, Gary Mackay obviously got a wee kick on the backside and came in, and that probably got Gary back playing to the level that Gary could. But as I say, it was great just to be there for that year, that season.
You mentioned about the team at Berwick having the sort of heart ripped out of it. How did you go about rebuilding that?
My first season with Jimmy, after Jimmy left, I just felt I just had to keep the team ticking over, because the Bosman ruling hadn't come in at that time. I had a group of players who were a great bunch, but I felt that they weren't good enough to go and challenge in the second division. So I just had to ride that season out. And then I said to Jamie at the time, Jamie came in as chairman, who was absolutely fantastic for me. I can't speak how good Jamie and Angela, his wife was fully better than Jamie. She was actually the chairwoman. She was great. The two of them were absolutely fantastic for me. And I said to Jamie, this is going to be 2 years before we actually challenge, because we'll start to build the following season. We'll start to build. But I knew we wouldn't be able to change that squad around enough in one season to be challenging. And what Alan touched on earlier was that the Bosman ruling was coming in. And I knew the Bosman ruling was coming in. And the second season, in the January, which I shouldn't have probably done at that time, I went inside Colin Campbell, Alan Neil, Davy Watt and Murray Hunter. I don't know if I actually wanted Murray Hunter, but the three guys wanted Murray Hunter to come because he was such a good lad. So I signed the four of these guys on the Bosman ruling from East Stirling. East Stirling were doing really well at that time. I just felt I could go and get these players for nothing. We could pay a wee bit extra money, and I convinced them to come along. Obviously, some of them were Edinburgh based, which made it easy. And that was starting to build that team. And on that second season, we started to get a good squad. And we were lucky enough. I think we should have still won the league. We had more than enough good team to win that league, but we finished second and we got promotion, and that was the job done. Yeah,
because Queen's Park were the winners of the league that year, weren't they? And they had a good season. Darren Smith was on actually a few weeks ago, and he was talking about that season and being promoted. And obviously there was that goal at Hampden. Yeah, you remember that?
Fantastic goal, yeah. I'm fed up listening to that goal from Darren, yeah.
That's 2 years.
Darren Smith, I saw Darren playing at 18. Obviously, Ian Smith would have been there with you, Alan, I think.
Yeah.
Ian's probably been there round Berwick for about 40 odd years now. Between Darren and Ian, it's probably been 40 years round Berwick Rangers. No, Darren, I saw as an 18-year-old. And he was a fantastic talent, a very, very slight boy, but great ability, and somebody who could go and beat players, score goals, create things. And as I say, I wasn't frightened to go and throw Darren in at Berwick, because I just felt he was a real good football player. What I had to do with Darren a wee bit, I had to protect him if we were going to Cowdenbeath. As Alan touched on it, it's a really tight park and some good old professional players there. And at times at Cowdenbeath or Albion Rovers, I would maybe leave Darren out for the first 60 minutes and bring him on with 30 minutes to go and get his wee bit magic when the game had settled down a wee bit, and get Darren's magic. And 9 times out of 10, Darren would come up with the goods.
He still shows the ability that he's got now, in training, and he's really good now at throwing him into a drill and letting him coach within the drill.
Yeah.
And he can coach the young boys, and he can coach them, actually within a possession box or within a small game or whatever it is. And all the boys love it. They love it when they get Darren on their team. They know that he's just going to get the ball and he's going to find them, he's going to pass the ball to them. And so they're all want to change bibs and all that. When Darren's coming in to play, they're all spotting bibs trying to get into Darren's team.
No, we took Darren to Raith Rovers as well. When obviously we had the hybrid situations, so Darren was working, so we brought Darren in. I think it was maybe a year or 2 years, Darren was at Wraith, and he did a good job there. Obviously, my spell at Berwick, we had Darren and we had Mark Anthony, another fantastic football player. And the two of them, I think, went on trial down at Hartlepool. Maybe one other club, wee Mark was down at. And to be fair, the two of them were great players. And again, like Mark and Neil, probably should have played at a higher level. I think now, because as Kevin knows, you can go and watch any game in the world now. Highlights. I think if we had the scouting system that we do have now, I think Darren and Mark Anthony would have been picked up and moved on to better things and probably gone full time at that time.
Darren told the story about when they went down on trial, Adam, didn't they? And Mark Anthony was nutmegging the captain, and that was just what Mark's like. He's just brassy, isn't he?
Yeah, he scored. We played pre-season against Newcastle, and he scored from the halfway line. His vision, his overall. I was lucky with Mark because, again, with my contacts with Jim, when I managed to get Mark to come, he'd obviously been released from Celtic, and myself and Jamie worked really hard to get Mark there. And I was very lucky that Jim Jeffries and Billy Brown would take Mark in, and he could train full time with Hearts. And I was hoping that maybe Hearts, what he would show in the training, that Hearts might take him. And speaking to Billy Brown, he was great with training, and it kept Mark's fitness really high. Mark was one who had a wee tendency to put some weight on, as myself and Kevin know. And as I say, the first season it was great because he was training full time, and he was fantastic on the football park. Unfortunately, the second season, Hearts couldn't take him in because they had too many numbers, and he probably lost a wee bit of fitness, which didn't help him. But a great lad, two great lads, and two real good football players.
Yep. Just quickly on Tony, we Dan had a spell in Scottish Widows as well, so I'm sure I'm still due him a few favours from that point. But his dad Ian, so at Meadowbank we have a golf outing every year. It's been going for a long time now, which is great. It's always like the last Friday in April. We go up to Kinross for a game of golf, overnight stay. Wee Anno goes, Kano goes, good lads, Watty Boyd, Graham Armstrong, David Roseborough. But we didn't play it this year because of the COVID-19. But Ian Smith is the current holder of the green jacket. So what to bring it in a wee bit just to fit him. But
he's on the podcast next week. He's on next Sunday, yeah.
Well, you'll need to ask him about that. He was honestly, and see when he won it, it was like he'd won the World Cup. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And that's it. And going back to it, I touched on earlier, and Paul touched on it earlier, is these are guys that I played football with 25, 30 years ago almost, you know what I mean? So still keep in touch with them, it's only once a year, but to me, that is a massive part of what certainly my playing career was all about. You'll need to ask Ian about his green jacket.
How would you like to be in with a chance of winning £1,000 every month? If that sounds appealing to you, because it sure does to me, you need to join Berwick Rangers Supporters Club's monthly draw. For just £5 per month, you'll go into a draw with hundreds of other Dream Team supporters to win the monthly jackpot. In addition to the £1,000 prize, the Supporters Club will be donating £250 each month to a chosen local charity, with the rest of the profits from the draw going to the football club. For details on how to sign up, visit berwickrangers.com or message the Supporters Organisation on Facebook, Berwick Rangers Supporters Club, or on Twitter at BRFC Sup Club. Berwick Rangers Supporters Club, supporting your club and your community.
Paul, so you almost did back-to-back promotions following the promotion in the first season, and we just missed out in second place by Arbroath. What was that year like?
I felt we had a really good squad before that season started, and that proved to be right. We signed Barry Elliott on loan from Celtic, and he was a good player, scored a lot of goals for us, great movement, really quick. Unfortunately, we couldn't keep him, and he went back to Celtic in the January. And I firmly believe if we were able to keep, if we managed to keep Barry, we would have gone up that year, because there was games we probably drew where I think Barry would have got his goals, because he was a special player at that level. He was probably too good a player at that level. Arbroath again had a good team as well, and we were just we just probably didn't have enough to get over that line. But it'd been fantastic to go back-to-back promotions.
And we've had some decent cup runs during your reign, including forcing replays with Hearts and Rangers. What are your memories from those times?
Great times, absolutely fantastic, and great for the players. You know, as a player playing at that level, to get Glasgow Rangers. I know they played them obviously in the league, but it was a wee bit different circumstances. To get them in the Scottish Cup, and you've got Kinija, Amoruso, Kloss playing in that team, was just fantastic for these football players. The build-up was funny because obviously the weather was terrible, and obviously the first game was we called off. Jamie managed to get a balloon over the pitch, hot air balloon over the pitch, and he said to me on the Thursday, "You've got to come down. You've got to come down. The balloon's up and the pitch is thawing out." So I travelled all the way down on the Thursday. I got down about 7 o'clock at night. It must have been -10, I think, in Berwick that night. The pitch was absolutely rock solid, and I'm going, "Jamie, there's absolutely no chance of this game going ahead." So he goes, "No, it'll be fine in the morning." So cut a long story short, Alec McLeish, I think, came down on the Friday, and the game was called. As soon as Rangers turned up, the game was called off. And obviously the game was going to be live on Sky. And I think our share of that was £110,000. So the club were obviously panicking that the game wouldn't go ahead on Sky again. Obviously, we paid £10,000 for the balloon that didn't work. We paid £10,000 for floodlights, for one big floodlight to come over Shielfield. But fortunately enough, the game did go ahead. Our build-up to the game was probably, we didn't train properly for 3 weeks. Ian Smith managed us to get into the school gym for training, and we were training at the Corn Exchange in Edinburgh. So preparation was very, very limited, what we could do, because we were working in the school gym and working in the Corn Exchange on the small AstroTurf. So we didn't have a real chance to prepare much for that game. But really, we set up to just basically drop off the game, try and slow the game down, because we knew Rangers probably wouldn't play at a real high tempo and a high pace that day. So we dropped off to the halfway line every time Rangers got the ball and tried to make it difficult for them. And team talk was very easy that night. We'd done as much preparation, as I said, as we could. And the team talk was basically, we went through the Rangers team, the international players that Rangers had there. I think Flo played at 12 million signing. Roland de Boer was on the bench. So the team talk was very, very easy. We went obviously through the Rangers team, and we just told them that it's a freezing cold night, Monday night down at Berwick, they won't fancy it. And the boys went out and did themselves, fantastically well. And a great night for the players. I remember on that one, with 5 minutes to go, I'm standing in the dugout, and all I hear is, Paul! And wee Jamie Curl's just looking over the terrace in, and he's shouting at me, Can we do it? I said, well, can you not settle for a draw, Chairman? He goes, that's what I mean, I want a draw, I want to go back to Ibrox. So we managed to get the draw. A few of the board weren't happy because I'd managed to get the players a fantastic bonus, and some of the board weren't too happy with that, but Jamie pushed it through for the players, and for the players again to go through to Ibrox and play in that game. And the way Rangers treated our players that day were fantastic. They gave the whole squad bottles of whiskey with a Berwick Rangers and Rangers label, which I think probably one still lying in my dad's house somewhere. So it was fantastic for the players just to play that one. And just briefly touching on the Hearts game, obviously we drew down at Berwick as well. It was again a Tuesday night at Tynecastle. Tynecastle, as the guys know, is just a fantastic atmosphere there. We managed to go 1-0 up, and unfortunately we just couldn't hold out again. And there were two fantastic occasions for the football club, for the players, and obviously financially it was great for the club as well.
Adam, you touched on earlier about good memories at Berwick. By far my worst memory, and Paul's just jogged my memory in terms of talking about the old firm, so I'll keep this short, but I think it was our second season, drew Meadowbank in the cup, and it was the height of winter, and the games kept getting called off. So by this point, the draw for the next round had been made. So the winners of the tie were away to Celtic, and Celtic at that point were playing at Hampden. because Parkhead was getting redeveloped. So we played on a Monday night at Meadowbank and we drew 1-1. So at that point, Berwick didn't. I don't think they owned the ground, so we could only play games on a Tuesday or a Thursday. So the replay was the following night, right? So we played 90 minutes on the Monday, and the replay was at Berwick on the Tuesday night. So we're 2-1 up, right? We're 1-0 down at half time. We're 2-1 up. We're literally 30 seconds to go, and we had a goalie at the time, Mark Osborne. And I think it was maybe Yano, who's playing for Meadowbank. Yano's almost running out the box, and the goalie comes out and flattens him. Penalty, 2-2, right? So we go into extra time. We go 3-2 up, right? Willie Irvin scores to make it 4-2. The referee gives the goal. The linesman puts his flag up, so the goal gets chopped off for a challenge on the goalie. So we're 3-2 up, literally with 30 seconds to go. And I think it was a wee boy, Lee Bailey from Meadowbank. He's running away from the goal, and the boy Mark Osborne, the goalie, comes and clatters him again, right? Penalty, 3-3, and Meadowbank beat us on penalties, right? Absolutely the worst feeling I've ever had in football, right? And this is the story after it. The chairman at the time, Roy McDowell, who's sadly not with us now, he thought Mark Osborne had taken a bung from Meadowbank. Because, I mean, the penalties they gave away were ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So for the guys, the Fishy and Cookie and all that who are listening to this today, they'll definitely remember that game or those two games, but heartbreaking stuff. So Meadowbank went and played in front of 30,000. I think they got beat 3-0, but that's probably the lowest I've ever felt after a game, because we had the game won about 3 times, you know. So
did you play in the game against Celtic at Tynecastle? No,
I think that was the following season. I had just left. I didn't play in that game. I played a couple of times for Stenhousemuir at Tynecastle. Got beat on penalties in one of the games. In the other game, we were 2-0 up after half an hour, and we got beat 3-2. So,
unfortunately, I had a map played in that game.
Did you?
I was on the park. I wouldn't say I played. I was on the park that day.
It was Henrik Lawson's debut, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was poor. Thank God he wasn't on fire.
So when you did leave, Paul, I think I read you were the longest serving manager in Scottish football at the time, and it was following a game away at Stranraer. What can you remember about that? Sorry to bring it up as well, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for that. No, I think it was probably as I say, I thought that season I'd put a really good squad together. We had a fantastic pre-season. Yano was also coming to that, and as we all know, Yano, fantastic football player, and I thought I'd put a really good squad. Pre-season had gone really well. We were doing well in the cup, but just unfortunately we did, and every manager will say it, and it happens. We got a few injuries. Yano got injured there. We didn't have a great start to the league campaign. I made a big mistake we had Alan Neil, who I mentioned earlier, but signed from East Stirling. I made a big mistake. I let Alan Neil go. Alan, I don't know how many seasons Alan had possibly been at Berwick, 5 or 6 years. And I just felt I could change the squad around, bring a younger centre half in, and that was a mistake. I probably knew that after 3 games of that season. I should have kept Alan Neil. And as I say, we had injuries. I think Robbie Horn, Robbie was injured as well. So we had injuries. We didn't have the best start. And I think we'd played the week before the Stranraer game. I think we got beat 1-0 at home. I'm not sure who against. And I was talking to the opposing manager in the office, and all of a sudden 2 directors came bursting into the room and demanded I came upstairs right away. So I told them that I would be up when I was ready to go up. I thought it was a wee bit disrespectful to come in when another manager was in. So I eventually went upstairs and spoke to the 2 directors, and we had words at that time. And I probably knew that as that week was going on, we had Stranraer, who were sitting top of the league, we were going down there. And I just felt the build-up. I hadn't heard from anyone from the board that week, and I just felt things weren't probably quite right. We went down to Stranraer. No directors came on the bus that day, which I found strange. No directors came for a pre-match meal. So we went 1-0 up. I think Yano came back and managed to play that day. And we went 1-0 up against Stranraer, who I said were top of the league. And I turned round and punched my arm in the air, and I turned around and I saw the Berwick directors, and there was not one of them clapping, congrats, up, which usually they are very vocal. So they were all sitting there with glum faces, and I turned around to Greg Shaw, goes, things aren't looking good, big fellow. So we were 2-1 up, and with probably 30 seconds to go, and we lost a goal to go 2-2. And again, it's always a tough place to go, Stranraer. We found it tough at Raith. This year we lost a game with Raith, this year and drew one. So it's always a hard place to go. And I think Stranraer actually won the league that year. So it wasn't a bad result, 2-2 away from home. And came in, did the usual after the boys, but try to keep a positive spin on it. It's a good result down at Stranraer. Let's build on this. And just at that, Robert Wilson knocked on the door and asked me to come out to the car park, and obviously I was sacked in the car park. It's disappointing, but I probably my fate was sealed the week before, because I think even if we'd won that game down at Stranraer, I was still getting sacked.
That must have been difficult travelling back, because did you go on the team bus with them?
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, I went in. Obviously after that, it was a funny one, because the board told me it was a unanimous decision, and I said, well, Ian Smith's on the board. Does Ian Smith know? Because Ian was physio that day. He goes, no, Ian doesn't know. And I mentioned another director who was in hospital. Does he know? He said, no. So I said, well, it's a 2-year decision. It's not a unanimous decision. But anyway, I went in and spoke to the players. The players were upset at the time, and we, which I didn't usually do, we stopped off and got a couple of crates of beer, and we had a wee drink going up the road. And as I say, I was disappointed, because I felt that for 8 years I'd done a good job. I'd taken them from the second division. I still felt, even though we were second in the league that year, that we would be okay. I'd asked to bring a couple of players on loan. I had a good couple of players lined up from Hearts to come in and loan, and they wouldn't let me do that because of the injury crisis at the time. And I still believe that we would have finished mid-table that year. But as I say, I never got the chance. But I had a fantastic 8 years at Berwick, and for myself, I probably stayed at Berwick too long. I probably had a couple of opportunities to move club. It would have probably been a sideway move, could have been a club level with Berwick, on par with Berwick. But I decided through loyalty, probably to Jamie Curl at the time, to stay. And I think probably part of the problem was that I worked so close with Jamie and Angela on the board that when Jamie had left the year before, I think the new board came in. Craig came on at that time as well, and Robert came chairman. I felt maybe not so much Craig. I felt maybe some of the board felt that when I was there, that they had nothing. They weren't getting much of a say in anything. I worked very, very closely with Jamie, and I felt it was the new board wanted to make a wee statement and move me on. I never felt comfortable when Jamie left. When Jamie left the board, I never felt comfortable with the board that was put in place at that time.
So do you think it was a lot to do with sort of a new sort of era that was approached by the board, and that was the reason why you sort of moved on?
Yeah, I moved on. You moved on at the end of the day, because that season we weren't doing well. You've got to be honest. We're second bottom of the league. We played 9 games. We didn't have a great start, so that put myself under pressure. You're judged on, as Kevin knows, you're judged on results, and results weren't quite good enough that time. But I felt, because I'd been there for 8 years, I deserved a wee bit more loyalty to try and turn it around. I don't think I got a great chance to go and turn that around. I felt when they got the very first opportunity to get rid of me, they did.
And you ended up going to Stenhousemuir after that, and you ended up taking 5 away players, Paul, to be honest.
Best thing you done.
Yeah.
So you were assistant manager at Stenhousemuir and Raith. Was there ever a time where you thought about going back into being a first team coach or a manager?
I've been offered that. I've since I've gone to Raith, I'll leave. Steny was a fairly short spell, and again enjoyed my time working with Des. Again, we should have won that league by a million miles when we were at Stenhousemuir and came up short. I won't say what reason, but we came up short. We should have won the league. And Des got sacked, and I moved on. It was the right thing to do at that time, to move on. And I was doing a wee bit of scouting for Dick Campbell at that time, and then John McGlynn asked me to come in at Raith. John was full time at Raith, I was part time, and I was going to go in for a short spell for 6 months and just see how we got on. And we sort of just clicked together. We both worked really, really well together. And from that spell with John, it's just been fantastic. Yes, I've had a couple of opportunities in between my spells at Raith to go as manager, but I felt I needed a wee break from the game. I don't know, 18 months out of the game, which was great at that time. And John obviously got offered the job 18 months ago, and coming up 2 years. And I just felt it was the right time to go back in. And always said if John got another job, he's probably one of the only people I would go back with. And as I say, we've got back together there, working there.
Are you full time?
I'm full time. Went full time this time. Yeah, I was working for a company for many years, and I just felt it was time for a change from there. I was working. It was Glasgow just about every day, so I changed there. And just as I was changed and ready to go into a new job, I was ready to start the job on the Monday. And I was away my stag weekend, and John phoned me and said he'd been offered the Raith job, and I had to phone the guy up and say I wouldn't be joining him, and met up with John again.
It must have been
to be back involved, and John's a fantastic man to work for. He's so in depth with everything. Worked so hard. Again was a manager for many a year. Then went to Celtic and worked under Brendan Rodgers on the scouting scene and learned so much from there. And as a manager, I'm coming on 58 this year. You keep learning, and as we touched on earlier, the game's changed, managers have changed, and as I say, you're always learning new things. And I think John's gone into Celtic and learned a new style and a new way to work as well.
How was that? Must have been a big shout then to go and take the Raith job full time. With the uncertainty that's in football, like you say, nine games in one season at Berwick, and you were sacked. That could have happened again. You know what I mean? You and John could have been 9, 10, 11 games in. It's no worked. You've taken this on full time, and you're up shit creek after that,
Yeah. There's a few things changing in my life at that time. You obviously got divorced. I was getting married again, which was fantastic. So things change in your life, and as I say, I'd had a good job and a steady job for 15 years with one company, and I just felt I needed a change. So that had all changed as well. So it was a case of going into a new job as well, and I thought this opportunity come up to go full time. I always thought when I was as a player, always wanted to play full time. Lucky enough to play a long time as a full time football player. When I was at Berwick, your ambition is to be a full-time manager. I never got that chance. And then all of a sudden, very later on, as I think you touched on, Kevin, the Hearts thing came really late for me at 34-year-old. The full-time assistant manager came very late as well. So I just thought, no, let's just go for it. Give it a. And it was a gamble. Life's a gamble. Everything is a gamble. And I just felt I would give it a go. And so far, it's worked well for us.
It's great. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming on. I really appreciate your time. Paul, best of luck this week with the stuff with the arbitration. Hopefully, you'll get your promotion sort of fully signed off, as if it needs it, But hopefully, that'll be done this week. And thanks, Banksy, for joining us from your holiday in Inverness.
Thank you, Adam. Much appreciated. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, great stuff.
Adam, can I just wish Kevin and Jano all the best for the up and coming season. And we touched on earlier on, I think the club's going about the right way now with the foundation, and they're trying to build the links with it. I read a lot, it's the same as Alan. I think we've got a lot of affection for the football club, and I wish the new board, Craig's back in there. I heard you mention Cookie. Cookie used to shout abuse at me every week. He used to stand opposite me at the dugout on the far side and shout abuse. So I wish the new board all the success, and I know it'll be ongoing and it might be a few years, but I wish everybody at Berwick, the supporters and everybody, all the best for the up and coming season.
Cheers, Paul. Wish you all the best as well. Your cup final, hopefully that's that's another one in the bag for you.
Yeah, as I say, we just hope to get the last 6 weeks have been very frustrating waiting to see, getting everything confirmed. As far as we're concerned, we are a Championship club now, and that's how we're preparing for it. And hopefully everything gets sorted out this week, and we can look forward. We're thinking August the 17th we can get started. As we said right at the start of the podcast, that it's great to have a date to try and get your guys back in.
Have you got your squad finished, Paul?
No, we're a million miles away from getting things tied up. Obviously, with the court case going on, that's held us up a wee bit. So, as I say, if we get everything sorted out this week, we'll hopefully get working, getting our players signed up and bringing a few new players in.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Banksy.
Cheers, Kev. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. And thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Let BRFC podcast. If you enjoyed the episode today, please tell your friends, family, and followers, and we'll see you soon.